Bring Evan in here from Locked On Cavs. Evan, how you doing?
Good, guys. Thanks for having me. How are you guys doing?
Good to have you.
Man, I like that little zip up, that little mock neck. Let me see what you got on. Okay, you got the.
It matches his shoes. He's very fashionable.
I have no fashion sense whatsoever. Then my fiance is a fashionista.
So she dresses you?
No, she doesn't dress me, but I know
my
fashion.
You should let her dress you.
Don't let her lamp you up like that.
No, I wasn't saying that as it was a bad thing.
wrong with that.
I was saying that as like that's to be secure in yourself enough to let your fiance dress you. Good. Look at me.
Do
I'm
you know how
slob.
many women dress they men?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
My mother dresses me.
See, his mother dresses him. No problem. Well, you look sharp today.
Well,
Glad to
I
have you
want
with
to
us.
full disclosure. My wife does not dress me.
Okay.
There we go.
Tyvis wouldn't admit it if she did.
I would. I'm too drippy.
Would she like to dress you?
No, because I'm too drippy.
All right.
Pause a little bit.
Evan, obviously we've been talking about the Cavs for the last half hour. You know, and that's the NBA, right? Like one game you look like crap, the next game you look great. Game 3, who knows? Right after game 1, a lot of people were jumping off the bandwagon. Now I'm sure there's a lot of fans who are saying we can't lose to the Knicks, no chance, and they could go get crushed in game 3 in New York. What's your overall assessment of the first 2 games for the Cavs right now?
So I wasn't surprised they lost game 1, honestly. Other than Donovan Mitchell and then technically Danny Green, who didn't play in game 1, there's not a lot of playoff experience on this Cavs roster. And they were saying all the right things, saying like we're not going to be too caught up in the moment. It's not going to be too much, but you got to experience it to actually fully understand it. And that was a little bit of that trial by fire for Darius Garland, Karis LeVert, Isaac Okoro, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley. You can go down the list.
Allen had played in the playoffs
Allen and
before,
LeVert had played before, but like
not a lot.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
So it's just the expectations. You're one of the top dogs in the Eastern Conference. You want to prove you belong. You have a team in New York that you struggled with all regular season long. And it felt like a bit of a feeling out process, but more than anything, New York just kind of hit him with a level of physicality in game 1 that they just weren't ready for.
Yeah.
And you saw, at least after the end of the game, like Darius Garland went on the podium, JB Bickerstaff went on the podium. They're both super calm. They didn't seem stressed or pressed, which is a sign of that growth and maturity from last season when they seemed like they were really pressing during the play-in tournament. But there's like, everything's going to be okay, but we just got to match that physicality from the opening tip and just show that, hey, this is our home court. We're not going to lay down. We're not going to get bullied by you guys. And you saw it maybe after the first couple minutes in game 2, but Cleveland really hit New York in the mouth, and they would not let up all throughout the game. And they just kept hitting them and hitting them and hitting them. And it's a luxury. Donovan Mitchell doesn't need to score all night long because you have Darius Garland stepping up to the plate, which I kind of expected just because he's a big-time player. And as soon as he's comfortable, he's going to feel a lot better out there. Then LeVert just benefits from those two. And Mobley and Allen maybe didn't have the most refined game offensively, but those two were awesome on defense. They kept the Knicks from crashing the offensive glass a lot more. You could see that JB made a lot of smart decisions to adjust things and just kind of hit the right buttons. And they found a way to tie it up 1-1, so they had to feel good about their chances heading into the Garden. And it's a lot better than being down 0-2.
You know, I think a lot of the Cavs homers, and every fan base is a bunch of homers, a good percentage of them, were complaining about the referees in game 1. I thought the referees were fine. I don't believe that, like, the league wants the Knicks to win. Maybe in theory they do. They're not cheating for the Knicks to win. If they were cheating for the Knicks, I think the Knicks would have a lot more success the last 20 years. There was no cheat. I think the refereeing in the series has been spot on. I just think they were letting them be physical, which I got no problem with. I think it's better for the game, my opinion. And the Cavs, as you said, they played more physical and the same thing. I don't know. Have you had any issue with the officiating?
I agree with you. I don't think there's much of an issue with the officiating. If you look at the free throw disparity, New York shot more free throws in game 2, and the Cavs still blew them out of the water.
Right.
And Garland, Bickerstaff, Mitchell, whoever's talked to the media at this point has just said, they're letting us play. And we kind of have an understanding of like, okay, the refs are going to kind of be a little hands off with us on this one. That's the difference between the regular season and the playoffs. And now we got to figure out how physical are we allowed to be before the refs start blowing their whistles at that point. So they find that balance and they worked it out. And it worked in game 2 at that point. So it just, figured out. I don't think the officiating is that bad, but that's just the number one thing for fans. Like if there's bad calls, people just zero in on that and then make that their issue the whole game.
It's a hard sport to officiate.
I think if you watch over the totality of the entire playoffs, they've been letting the guys play the same
way.
It.
That's the way we want to say.
No blood, no foul.
That's
man.
right.
Unless it's like a blatant call, like I
don't want to see fouls every 2 seconds. I want to see action.
What's your take on Isaac Okoro? Do you think JB has a conundrum on his hands? He's rolled with Isaac the majority of the year. They like what he can give you defensively, but Karis LeVert he has the ability to kind of pick it up, and all of a sudden he gets it going. The Cavs offense becomes a different type beast.
It's an interesting conundrum with Isaac Okoro because a lot of people had expectations for him coming into this year just to make that leap. There's a lot of that narrative of how he's shooting the hell out of the ball heading into the season, how he's just working on his three-point shot, and it just hasn't translated. And I think if you just look at how this offense works, if he's the fifth banana on offense and he's giving you 8 to 10, that's great. But if the shot's not falling, it's a little bit dicier, especially in a playoff series like this. But Karis LeVert started this season as a starting three, went to JB and said, hey, I'm not getting enough shot opportunities. I'm kind of muddying things up with Donovan and DG. So he asked JB to go to the bench, and then they tried Dean Wade for a bit, and then Isaac's just been the guy since then. So if you're looking in this playoff series, I'm curious to see if JB makes a change going into Game 3 just because of how effective Karis was in Game 2. And then just Isaac only played 3 minutes after picking up those 2 fouls. And you look at that, but Karis functions better as that sixth man for the team. And if you get him rolling against a bench unit, and to your point, you guys were talking about it before, it doesn't matter if you start as long as you finish. And more often than not, Karis is finishing games for the Cavs. He averages more minutes than some of the starters most games too, just because he's that dude. And if you get him rolling with the bench squad, and then let's say Darius and Donovan are getting a bunch of defensive attention in Game 3, LeVert's just going to benefit from that because there's no defensive pressure on him at that point. So I think there is reason to be concerned about Okoro. I don't think you pull the plug on him just because he's your best point of attack defender and he's a dude you can just throw at Jalen Brunson and make Brunson uncomfortable right away. But maybe you just don't play him 30, 35 minutes because you can't expect him to be making those clutch time, big time shots for you down the stretch.
So would you rather him or would you rather Danny Green, or would you continue to keep Danny Green? I think it would be one of those things. If I was to start Danny Green, he wouldn't play a ton of minutes. Like I would have to have some quick rotations with him. But would you rather see Danny Green in that lineup just because he does at least give you that 3 ball and he gives you that playoff experience?
I mean, that's a good question because Danny Green does give you a lot of those things, but he just hasn't played a lot with those guys. And maybe there's just the unfamiliarity. So there's just the chemistry issues you're trying to work out and figure out in real time. And Green hasn't played real minutes until maybe the last few games of the regular season. And then last night, Chris Fedor noted that the plan was to give Danny more minutes in this game, but he came in, he played about 23 minutes, I want to say, and he played well. He only made 1 3-pointer, but he mostly played good defense, and he did what you want him to do. So to your point, you could start him over Isaac, but you keep that steady rotation maybe between him, Okoro, Jetty Osman just being that other 3-point shooting wing. And then if you're JB, you just ride the pulse of who's hottest in that game and you just stick with it because that's what JB said post-game after Game 2. The decision to keep with Karis for most of the game was Karis was feeling it, and he's like, I'm not going to mess up a good thing, just roll with it, and it led to a win. So,
Evan, Ricky Rubio, obviously last year before the injury was great. He was way better than we could have expected. And he's not been the same player this year since coming back from injury. Do you think he's done, or is he a guy that maybe next year a year past the injury, will be better again? Or
it's tricky since ACLs are just such a hard thing to come back from. This is the second time he's torn that ACL.
Yeah.
And it's just an unprecedented situation. Before they get Donovan, the expectation is, okay, the guard situation is going to be Colin Sexton at the time, Darius Garland, Karis LeVert, with Ricky Rubio being that backup point guard. Now that Donovan has really showed that he can play point, and then Karis has just kind of gelled really well in this 3-guard set they have, the need for Rubio isn't as much, but you look at how he looked in Game 1, the offense got wrecked. They just looked really disheveled. They looked out of place. And York took advantage of the fact that maybe Rubio's a step slow at times.
Yeah.
And I wrote about it and just said, I think the Cavs just need to pull the plug on the situation for now and just add shooting, add wing depth, because they have enough guard creation between Mitchell and Garland just to make it work. And to your point, maybe you pull the plug on the situation in the playoffs. Maybe there's situations in lineups that you can play Rubio that you feel comfortable with. But again, you found something that worked in Game 2, you work with it. And if it doesn't work in Game 3, you obviously make adjustments at that point. But you look ahead to next year, Rubio's on contract for next season and the year after that. You hope at that point he's a lot more healthy and he's just maybe over the mental hurdles that come with being back on the floor. And you see what you have, but he's also going to be in his later 30s. You still have Garland and Mitchell. And this is maybe a conversation for the summer, but
yeah, sure.
They signed Ricky Rubio before they had Donovan Mitchell. And I think now that you have Donovan Mitchell, you're like, we don't need Ricky Rubio as much as we originally did.
Yeah, with the ACL thing, I just think with Ricky Rubio, I've torn both of my ACLs. And I remember trying to play basketball after tearing my ACL. Like you see him?
I was looking at the little.
Yeah, I got them. Yeah, I got the lines. I got this, and these are my tattoos. This is a stat. It's a stat. I got a line on every part of my body, like every limb in part. Like there's a line from surgery. It's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
I got two. I got this one, and I had a sports hernia.
Haven't you got any lines from surgery?
I got knee surgery my freshman year.
All right, I got one, my Achilles tendon.
There you go. I tore that too. That sucks. I don't like that.
That's the worst.
Yeah. No, but when you trying to come back and play basketball, it's just like you're not really. I kind of compare it to being like you're not in control of your body. Mm-hmm. It's like you're uncoordinated. It's like the stuff you used to do where you didn't think like I'm gonna run and I'm gonna cut and I'm gonna jump and I'm gonna do this. It just doesn't. It just feels like your lower body is kind of detached, and it takes a lot to get your explosiveness back, just to trust your leg. For Rubio, I could tell that he's not 100%, and usually you won't be 100% to year two after you do it anyway. Mm-hmm. I think JB, and I'll ask you this question. You said whoever's riding the hot hand. Do you think he has the heart to say, well, look, I'm only going with 7? Because I thought the way he handled it was we didn't really see too many guys jump in the game. He used Jetty, and he also used LeVert. And then you saw a little bit of Danny Green. Yeah. And so it was 7 guys. And so do you think you will see much more shorter rotations and getting guys in and out like that when we get to New York?
I don't think you can afford to go shorter than 7 at this point, just because you don't want to gas out your core 4 guys. And then, to your point, they went with 7 in game 1 as well because he pulled the plug on Rubio and Wade at 1.2. And it was just LeVert and Okoro just kind of soaking up those 5, 6, 7-man minutes at that point. So I just don't think you can afford to because New York has a lot of depth. They have a pretty good bench unit. I know Josh Hart isn't 100%. I know Julius Randle isn't 100%. I know Jalen Brunson's still dealing with some thumb issues too. But, like, New York has the legs and they have the ability to run and get out on fast break. And if they're playing at home, they're going to be feeling themselves a lot more. So you might want to just keep that 7-man rotation. If you can find an opportunity to play 8 guys, great. But you don't want to burn your guys out because it's a 7-game series. It's not like, okay, whoever wins this next game, it's over. So you just got to be mindful of that fact and, like, play 6, 7 guys in game 3, and then you look at it in game 4. And as to your guys' point, you just try to split that series in New York so you can come back to Cleveland, try and win 5, and then lock it up in maybe 6 or 7 at that point. And you want to run your guys into the ground getting there.
Yeah, I was just going to pivot to that. Do you believe what they want to do is to get just the split in New York? Is that what they're looking? Now, obviously, I like to get greedy. I like 2. Yeah. You're going to give me 2. But is that the objective?
I mean, ideally, you want to win both games. I think if a team says we're only going out there to win 1, it's probably a fireable offense if you're a coach. But ideally, you win 1 game because you already got 1 game back in Cleveland. You secured that last night. And if you can get 1 more game in New York, you're guaranteeing yourself a little bit more breathing room. Let's say you win game 3. Game 4, there's way less pressure to maybe perform. And then if you can win in 4, awesome. You can come home in 5 and take care of business because that means the Knicks are just really rattled at that point. But if you can take care of business in 3, and let's say you drop the matinee game on Sunday, not a huge deal. You come back on Wednesday, take care of business, and then I believe they go back to New York at that point. And if you can close it out there because you already won there once, it's a little bit easier to work with. And then also, if that doesn't happen, you at least have game 7 in your back pocket too.
What do you think the Knicks, you're Tom Thibodeau, how do you address and what do you change about your gameplay to be able to win game 3 against the Cavs?
So I'm really surprised. The Knicks found a ton of success in game 1, just trapping and pressuring Darius Garland the moment he crossed the timeline. And then Garland gets flustered when they do that, and they kept denying Donovan Mitchell the ball because it's like that's Garland's safety blanket when that stuff happens. They went away from that in game 2. Like, I noticed, I'm like, well, what are the Knicks doing? Like, that was their formula for success, and they're abandoning it. And I wonder if it's Cleveland just hitting them with so much physicality that they were rattled and they couldn't, like, really get set. But maybe if you're able to find steady legs at home and just grind it out a little bit with Cleveland because it's weird because New York's the number 2 offensive team in the league this year, and they're the 7th defensive team, which is surprising because Tom Thibodeau's coaching them. But you can see the gears returning a little bit with how he schemed up the defensive game plan on Cleveland. So if you're Thibodeau, you want to try and just keep pressuring the guards and maybe just keep daring Darius Garland to performing. And I know that that's a risky gamble because Darius Garland's a big-time player, and he really showed it in Game 2, and then ditto for Donovan Mitchell. But the Knicks found a formula for success in Game 1 where they rattled the young dudes and said, all right, Donovan, beat us by yourself while the rest of your teammates are a little shaky because we just keep throwing a bunch of blows or just finding ways to make them uncomfortable every time they're on the floor.
Evan, what was your prediction for the series before it started?
I had Cavs in 6.
And what do you have now?
I still think it's going to be Cavs in 6, and they obviously have to win on the road in the Garden in Game 6. But I have a feeling just there's so much momentum heading into Game 3.
Yeah.
And they have found some things that work. And I do wonder if Thibodeau makes enough adjustments because it feels like Donovan Mitchell's starting to figure out how they're playing them on defense.
Yeah.
And it's encouraging because he's in Darius Garland's ear constantly saying, this is what they're doing. I want you to do this. Hey, just ignore me. Just go. And, he's empowering his teammates instead of just saying, I'm going to be the dude and carry you there, which is encouraging enough. But there's enough of that just momentum heading into Game 3 that you're yeah, you feel good about their chances that they could maybe steal the show on Friday night in the Garden, and then maybe the New York City nightlife beats them up on Saturday night, and then the Sunday's a little harder for them. But
let's hope you're right. No partying. This is the playoffs. You're not LeBron. No partying in New York. Evan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, man.
Good to have you in.